In this tutorial for new Blender users, I'll show you how to set up some simple object and material animations, and I'm using version 2.63a, and this is a really simple lesson. So I have a basic light scene setup that I like to use, and you've seen that in other video lessons of mine, and in this case I'll just add a cube to the scene with Shift A. So Shift A, Mesh, Cube. And so, well, I don't see it, so it added out of the scene because I was using it elsewhere. So I want to make sure it's back at the center. So the first thing I can do is Shift S, put the cursor to the center, and then I'll hit Shift S and put the selection to the cursor. And there's my cube back in the center of the scene. All right, because sometimes they get lost. I'll move them up a little bit, and I'll S and scale them down just a little bit, like this. So we'll just work with this simple cube for the object animation, for starters. Then we'll animate the materials as well. So there's a couple ways to do it, and if you first thing we want is this toolbar. If you don't have the toolbar in view over here, you have to press the T key. I'll turn it off with T, and then I'll press it back on with T. And then with its current position, I'll just come over here and I'll press the insert button for keyframe, and I'll press rotation. So insert rotation keyframe. And then down here, it's going to run between frames 1 and 250. So I'm just going to move it up a few frames with the right arrow key, say to frame 20 right there. Now let's go up even higher. Let's go to frame 40 so it doesn't move so fast. And then at frame 40, I'm going to press R and then press Z. And I'm just going to rotate him a few times this direction. And then I'll press the insert keyframe, and then I'll rotation again. And then I'll come down here and I'll move up to frame 80, and I'll do the same thing, RZ, but I'll rotate back the other direction a few times, and then I'll insert rotation. But instead of doing it here, I'll just get out of that, and I can also just press the I key and do the same thing, so it's always available. So I've inserted the rotation. So now I've added 3 keyframes, and you can see that because I have these yellow markers at that location. And you can get to your keyframes with the up and down arrow keys. So I'll press the down arrow key, it goes back to frame 40, and then back to frame 1 here, like this. And if we run the animation, just with Alt A on the keyboard, we'll see that it spins that way, and then it spins back that way. Alright, so that's just to get started. Now let's move back to frame 1, and then we'll also add, say, another keyframe. So I'll press I and I'll add a location keyframe. I'll up arrow key to the next location, next keyframe. I'll move the cube down here, press I, add another location keyframe, up arrow key, and move it back over to here, press I, and another location keyframe. But you'll notice you could also just combine location, rotation, location, scale, location, rotation, scale to keep them separate like that. If you want, I'll show you where that plays in later on. So we have that set here. Then if I press back here at the beginning and run it, you can see it's moving and rotating simultaneously. Alright, so now let's continue on. And one other thing, this plain old gray color cube for me is kind of boring. So I want to change it up and give it a little bit of color. So I'll come over here to the Material tab. And whoops, that's not it. It's out of view. Sorry, hang on. There it is over here, right there, Material tab. I'll press New, press this, and I say I'll start with a purple color, like that. So now the cube is purple. And then, so I'm on frame 1. I want this to stay purple for the moment. However, I want to animate the colors as well. So I have to come over here, and if I hover my mouse over the color, this is a great little feature, and then you press I, it actually puts a little box around it. That tells you there's a keyframe set for that color. Right? So let's move up, arrow key up to frame 40, and then I'm going to change this to yellow. Left clicked there, and I'm also going to press I here for frame 40, and then the next one I'm going to press up here, and I'm going to change that to green, and hover over it, and I, and then I have a keyframe set for each one of these. Alright, so I should have, well, we should be able to verify it. I down arrow key, there's yellow, down arrow key, there's purple. However, you notice that up here at frame 80, it's set at green and the object is green, but back at 40, my color is set at yellow. It knows about it, but it only shows yellow, shows green, and same thing, purple, but it only shows green. So it's actually set, but this is some things you can't actually see in texture mode. Well, let's see if we can see it in solid mode. Let's go into solid mode here. Let's go back. Yellow, green. You can. So in solid mode you can see it, but in texture mode you can't see it. So some things you can't be in texture mode to be able to see your animations like that. And if you were to, even though I was working in texture mode, which is my preferred mode of operation because it just looks better for me, and computers are plenty fast enough these days, if I was to animate it I wouldn't see it. But if I was to render it here, let's just actually render this particular frame. I'll hit F12 and I'll render it, and there's my purple cube like that. So it does actually know about that color. I'll escape out of that and I'll back down a frame. Whoops, I'll back up to this frame. Should be yellow, though it shows green. My camera probably is not going to see that, is it? I better hang on. I better get another window real quick and look at the camera. Nah, it still sees it. Alright, so I'll render that, and it should render yellow. And there it is, it renders yellow. So it'll render fine, it's just your preview window doesn't show up properly in texture mode. But just so you're aware of that. Alright, well, hope that gives you an idea. There's maybe in the next lesson I'll maybe I can give you a quick preview right here. I'll just move this window up like this, or maybe I'll make another window like this. I'll just make a quick little window and I'll switch this over to the graph editor. Alright, and you'll notice you have all these features associated with it. Here's our material keyframes that are set. Here's the location keyframes, and here's the rotation keyframes like this. And so channels that are visible, you can turn these channels on and off so you can see. In fact, I can show you each one of the X, Y's, and Z's like this here. I'll make it a little bit, I'll move it up a little bit more so you can see them like that. And here's the colors. You can see the RGB values for the colors, so you can change each one of these directly. So here's the X, Y, and Z, and basically I'll do this graphing editor separately in a separate tutorial, but essentially what you can do in these is you can grab these with the right mouse key, you can extrapolate them out, you can basically replicate them. So I hope that gives you an idea for the moment. You might want to experiment with this until I do a tutorial on this. And that's it for this lesson, and I'll see you in the next lesson.